Last week, the former top prosecutor in Manhattan told lawmakers Attorney General William Barr pushed him to resign from his post. Geoffrey Berman said Barr also urged him to take another job in the Trump administration, warning that if he did not, he would be fired. Refusing to resign, Berman was eventually fired after leading the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York until last month. Democrats have raised concerns about his removal. It's not the only reshuffling we've seen recently at the Justice Department. Rebecca Roiphe joins me now. She is a CBSN legal analyst and former assistant district attorney in New York County. Rebecca, welcome. It's great to see you. So according to Berman's prepared remarks for the Judiciary Committee, Barr pushed him to step down from his job both in person and over the phone on June 19th. He was then fired the next day after refusing to resign. What do you make of Berman's testimony?
So I think that one of the most alarming things about that story is the fact that Bill Barr lied. So that he represented that his meeting with Berman, that in his meeting with Berman, Berman resigned. And Berman clearly said in his testimony that he refused to resign. So those two things are just incompatible. So that leads people to wonder what was actually going on here. And a lot of people have speculated, the Southern District of New York is engaged in really important investigations into Trump and Trump's associates. And was Bill Barr trying to interfere in those investigations? And I think people are legitimately worried about that. Now, Bill Barr has insisted that he wasn't and has said that those allegations are absurd, but the appearances are troubling. At the very least, It looks as if what Bill Barr was trying to do was exert greater control over the historically independent prosecutor's office. So whether or not he was attempting to interfere in a particular investigation, it looks very clearly like he was trying to control the office in a way, centralize control over the office in a way that is inconsistent with not only with the history of the Southern District of New York, but inconsistent with the history of prosecution in America.
And so, Rebecca, is this all a toothless investigation on the part of lawmakers, or could it result in something consequential?
I think if it were ever determined that he was, in fact, by doing this, trying to interfere in a particular investigation, that would be shocking. That would be, certainly something that would lead to an investigation into Bill Barr himself and concerns about whether or not Bill Barr should be impeached. My guess is that's not where it's going to go. I think instead what we're looking at is somebody who is trying to consolidate control over prosecution entirely, in part because he himself believes that these independent offices have become politicized and have been pursuing his boss. The irony in all of this is by stepping in, he's the one who's politicizing these offices because he's the political appointee. He's the one who everybody thinks, well, you're so close to Trump. If you're trying to assert all of this control, you must have a reason. As opposed to these line prosecutors, these people who have been professional prosecutors who don't have a horse in the race. They're clearly just doing their job, pursuing the law and the evidence. And until it's proved that they have some kind of vendetta, then this looks like, this looks very strange on the part of Barr. It looks like he has a real axe to grind here. And that's concerning because it's extremely important that our prosecutors not only remain independent from political pressure, but also appear legitimate. And I think he has done serious damage, if not to the actual independence of these prosecutors, at the very least to that appearance. I think it's troubling. And I think that the lawmakers are absolutely right to look into it.
So, Rebecca, on Friday, Attorney General Barr announced that Richard Donoghue would be moving from his job as district attorney in the Eastern District of New York to a position at Maine Justice. What more can you tell us about Donoghue, and how common is this kind of move in the Justice Department?
It's uncommon, and it's uncommon particularly in this particular timing, right before an election. This is less alarming, I think, than the incident with Berman, in part because these are two career prosecutors who have had experience in the office. So at least they both seem to have a good experience with prosecution and criminal work. They're certainly qualified for this job. At the same time, I think it does look as if what's happening is Barr is taking people who he has developed a relationship with and he feels are loyal to him, and trying to install them in these jobs that have historically had a good deal of independence, not legally, not formally, but informally through tradition and through history, have been independent from main justice. And the reason for that, in part, is because we want prosecution to be independent of politics, and main justice is closer to politics than these independent individual offices are. So it has that same concern, I think. It really does.
And Rebecca, also on Friday, President Trump commuted Roger Stone's sentence. Stone, as you know, had been found guilty of lying to investigators and obstruction in the Russia investigation. Former special counsel Robert Mueller reacted to Stone's, situation in an op-ed, saying Stone was prosecuted and convicted because he committed several federal crimes. He remains a convicted felon, and rightly so. Attorney General William Barr even called Stone's sentence fair just last week. So what kind of message does the president's move send to the rank and file within the Justice Department?
I think it's incredibly demoralizing to the rank and file within the Justice Department. I would imagine that morale is extremely low right now. This is a job people pursue not for money. There are lots of other jobs. It's a prominent job, but you could go to a fancy law firm if you could get a job at the Southern District of New York or the Eastern District of New York. And these prosecutors take this job because they are committed to public service and this notion that they are doing something that is valuable and they're serving justice. And I think that the idea that their job is being undermined in this way, and the reputation of federal prosecutors themselves are being undermined in this way, must make it very hard on a day-to-day basis for these prosecutors to do their job. And just pausing for a second, because we focus so much on Trump, but most of the things that these people are doing have nothing to do with politics. So it's quite alarming that this narrative about the, Russian investigation and all these prosecutions that have come from it has now, I think, through a number of different moves on the part of Trump, gradually undermined the daily work that prosecutors do. And this is especially ironic from a president who calls himself the law and order president, because this is not good for law and order. I mean, these are dangerous criminals, drug dealers, organized crime, that these prosecutors spend their days working to combat. And I think that weakening the offices is weakening the country and weakening law and order.
All right. Well, Rebecca Roiphe, thank you so much for sharing your legal expertise with us. We really appreciate it.